Hey everybody, um, it's 10:15 in the PM, and you are watching The Last Page with Tim Page. I'm your host, Tim Page. Yeah, it's the very first episode, the first page, the last page, here with Tim Page. And tonight I want to talk about the war in Ukraine, the special military operation, and why I think Russia is justified. And yeah, I do stand with Russia. I think that there needs to be a peace deal done. About 2 months into this conflict, Vladimir Putin and Vladimir Zelensky, they did reach a peace agreement, a verbal peace agreement. And yeah, Ukraine was going to respect the independence of, the separatists in the Donbass region. It was going to respect their independence. It was going to remain neutral on NATO, not join NATO. And Russia didn't care if they wanted to have stronger ties with Europe. And yeah, that was agreed to. And Boris Johnson, freaking douchebag from the UK, flew in to the Ukraine and said to Vladimir Zelensky, no, don't do it. We'll send you weapons, we'll support you. And yeah, so the conflict continues. And a lot of the Ukraine's part in this is on pure corruption. There's a lot of people getting rich, military men, politicians, oligarchs through the black market are making tons of money off of this. It's been reported that 70% of the weapons that are sent in from various countries, 70% of it goes into the black market, enriching corrupt individuals. 30% makes into the field. It's all about money. And, the main reasons for Russia doing this special military operation, and it is extremely limited, it's not like, say, in the early 2000s, say, the US just decimating Afghanistan or Iraq, just bombing just cities, craters, civilians, families, women, children, men destroyed, just civilians. And I don't think any of those were justified, but this, Russia has done an extremely limited special military operation. It's made some Russians mad. They're like, when is this going to end? This could be done in no time. But I think Vladimir Putin's being very by the book, and, he's not attacking civilian infrastructure. His objectives are to demilitarize, especially those areas that have been attacking ethnically Russian regions. There's been major persecution on part of the Ukrainian government on, ethnically Russian Ukrainians who are very tied to that culture. And the Ukraine, it's, much like the US, it's kind of divided. It's not a monolith, There's those Ukrainians, I think half of it wants to be more closely tied to the European Union, whereas another half wants to have closer ties with Russia. And unfortunately, a lot of those ethnically Russian Ukrainians are been persecuted for years. And neo-Nazis, it's a real problem in the Ukraine, for all this talk we hear in the West, of white supremacy and all that, and many of it isn't even white supremacy. things like the Proud Boys and stuff like that. They're not white supremacists, you know. They're like, their leader was an Afro-Cuban. The media won't tell you that. I mean, they're provocative, you know. They say they're Western chauvinists, you know. They believe, you know, Western civilization is the best, but it doesn't have anything to do with color or race or anything like that. And it's, you know, they fought back against, you know, violent leftists, you know, like the Antifa type people. But that's a whole other story. But in Ukraine, there are actual, literal, self-identifying neo-Nazis. And, you know, there's the Azov Battalion, which was kind of a paramilitary group that Vladimir Zelensky actually incorporated, became officially part of the Ukrainian military. And they're brutal freaking people, and they're committing war crimes and atrocities. You'll hear this propaganda in the news, oh, Russia is committing war crimes, and they'll send these pictures, but it turns out it was actually the Azov Battalion. And yeah, there's extreme war crimes that are criminal, that the Ukraine, admitted by even, you know, mercenaries who have gone in there to support, saying like, yeah, these guys are freaking nuts. And yeah, they're not abiding by norms, and it's brutal. Vladimir Zelensky is not a champion of democracy. Okay, he's banned all opposition parties, he's jailed them, he's banned all opposition media, he's banned Russian Orthodox Christians, he's thrown priests in jails, he's confiscated churches. It's completely insane. It's a dictatorship, has nothing to do with democracy. But I think Russia went in there to defend those strong ethnically Russian Ukrainians. Well, they wanted independence because I think they got tired of the persecution. Not to mention that the Ukrainian government has been attacking them for years, and there has been, ceasefires planned out. There was the Minsk Agreement 1 and 2, and both of them were broken by the Ukrainian government. And yeah, shelling its own citizens. You know, I live here in Canada, you know, we have the Quebec separatists. There's been a couple referendums in the early 80s and the mid 90s of, you know, Quebecers who want to separate from Canada. Can you imagine if the Canadian government, like us, we started battling with the separatists and persecuting, you know, the Quebecers who feel close to their culture? And I think it's much the same over there. And I think when those referendums happened in the early 80s and the mid 90s, it was like, what, 49 to 50, like barely, you know, the people in Quebec by like a slim margin voted to stay. But if it went to the greater, I would imagine those votes have been halved to. I would imagine Canada would have honored it. But so many of those regions held referendums, and I do believe they're legitimate and to be incorporated into the Russian Federation now. But everything you've been hearing in the media has been lies. Even the other day, like, I started recording this, and, you know, I think just before doing it, I saw a thing in the news, oh yeah, a Russian missile blew up a Ukrainian apartment, and, you know, like, what, 5 or 9 civilians dead and many injured. And it's like, wow, that doesn't sound good. That doesn't sound, how would I defend something like that, you know? But then it turns out it was a Ukrainian missile, like from their missile defense system. It fell and blew up its own people. I guess it was accidental, but they blame it on the Russians when it turned out it wasn't. Just like that missile that went into Poland, another defense thing. And Vladimir Zelensky, even knowing he lied, he knew it wasn't Russian. He said, yeah, Russia just bombed Poland. Yeah, we need to basically start World War III. Yeah, US. So people should look, dude, hit the road, you freaking scammer, you know? You lying, like, cheat. But Ukraine has been You know, there was an article a few years ago naming Ukraine one of the top 5 most corrupt countries in the world. And so I think a lot of politicians go there to launder their money. Look at Joe Biden and his son on the board of Burisma. You know, all these crazy neocon oligarchs, all their crazy geopolitical ideas, which are just total nonsense, fantasy land, just pure craziness. They seem to want to control the Ukraine, and but we'll say number one, Russia wanted to defend those people being persecuted. Denazification, yeah, the Ukrainian neo-Nazi problem is huge. I think it makes up like 10% of their parliament. You know, that party, like, they have a lot of swing in their parliament. Like, it's kind of, I don't know, the point of balance or whatever. If different politicians want their ideas to swing one way, they have to make sure to get the neo-Nazis on board, make their concessions, whatever, get their viewpoints in. But yeah, it's sick. It's a real problem. But with the Ukrainian neo-Nazis, you know, some say, oh, well, Vladimir Zelensky, he's a Jew. They can't be Nazis, you know, but that, their little brand of it, rather, they are more focused on hatred of the Ruskies. They hate Russians and keeping their Ukrainian people ethnically pure from that Russian contamination, they would say. And yeah, there's so much hatred for the Russian people in the whole world. Like, it's insane. Russian cats being banned, you know, Russian teams not being able to play in sports. Like, it's madness, you know. The world talks about, oh, all this, like, moving ahead on, you know, we've overcome racism and things like that, but the amount of bigotry and hatred towards Russian people, it's insane, you know. Like, you know, I don't like the Chinese Communist Party, you know. I don't like a lot of what China and its government is doing. I think it's wrong, but I don't hate Chinese people. I think generally they're good people who are under an oppressive government. And I feel bad. And so for people just hating everything from Russian cats to, like, what, are they going to ban Russian dolls? But at any rate, there's those problems. And one big problem too is the Ukraine really flirting with joining NATO. And for years, Russia has said, if you guys join NATO, we will invade, because that's a direct provocation of and a threat to our national security. Because if Ukraine were to join NATO, they would be able to put nuclear weapons on the border of Ukraine and Russia, pointed towards Russia. And you look back in the 1960s, when there was the Cuban Missile Crisis, I think, when the Soviet Union was looking to put nuclear weapons pointed towards the U.S. in the border of Cuba there. And yeah, there was a real threat of war breaking out, because U.S. said, yeah, we'll go to war if you guys do that. And Cuba and the Soviet Union were smart and backed down. But Vladimir Zelensky, when he first got into being the president of the Ukraine, he said he would remain neutral on that. But the CIA, and especially in the UK, have really been, like, pressuring him, like, join NATO, where Russia's been saying for years, if you do that, we will invade. And they really have been preparing this for years, because yeah, I don't blame them at all. And I really don't see what it is with the US, UK, you know, the current Canadian government, European Union, their real hatred and of Russia. You know, the collective West here, like we're way too dependent on regimes like China and Iran, Saudi Arabia. Like those are terrible regimes with major human rights abuses. Russia, I don't think Vladimir Putin is necessarily a saint. I think, the best way I've heard it described, Vladimir Putin is not necessarily white nor black, but more gray, I do think he is a good statesman. I think he is kind of authoritarian. I'm sure he's done some sketchy things, but I don't believe any of the propaganda. I've learned everything that they've been saying in the media has turned all out to be lies and just pure crap and propaganda. They're generally speaking a Christian nation. Well, they are a Christian nation. You could say whatever. Is he kind of like Constantine, who basically legalized Christianity back in the day? Oh, was he really, sincere and all that? He didn't get baptized till the day of his death, and whatever. It's debatable. I'm not gonna claim to know the heart of Vladimir Putin, but I do know that God says a government that at the very least respects God's children and allows them to practice the Christian faith, godly faith. God blesses that. And I do think we are seeing that. All these sanctions against Russia has really only hurt the West. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. Their economy is getting stronger. They're working towards, the Russian ruble is looking to get backed by gold, and it's actually hurting our own prosperity and global place in the world. And, I live in Canada. I'm kind of speaking generally, the West in general. I mean, the US is our biggest neighbor, but I really do think that peace deal needs to come about. I think that we need to have stronger relations with Russia, heal those wounds, because I really think you look back into the fall of the Soviet Union back in 1991, you look at NATO, and NATO was first formed, supposedly to kind of control the expansion of the USSR. And once the USSR fell, you would think that should be the end of NATO. And when, all kind of, world leaders were kind of trying to set up the new order of things and look for a new peaceful future, a lot of people did say, like, if you keep NATO going, that's going to cause problems in the future. Even Crimea, there was a lot of talk, should that go to Russia or the Ukraine? And there was many people who said, like, Crimea should be a part of Russia and there could be a war in the future. I remember back around the time when the annexation of Crimea happened, and I just saw what I would see on the news. I'd be like, wow, that's really terrible. You would think it was some terrorizing thing, but no, those people welcomed them. It wasn't a war and invasion. They welcomed in the military with fireworks. I even met a couple girls once in Vancouver, and back in my party days, and they're all drinking, and they're like, oh, we're from Ukraine, but now we're Russian, and yay. And I'm thinking, like, wow, like, you guys like that? Like, I thought it was a terrible thing, but that's because the media doesn't tell you. They paint things in such a skewed manner, lies and propaganda. I think there was a former CIA guy, like, from the early 80s. I think he kind of left his post there, and he did once say that they plant disinformation in the media, and they had a mission of, once the people, everything that the people believes is a lie, our mission has been completed. And I really recommend checking out the movie Ukraine on Fire, from Oliver Stone. That will really give you a strong insight of what's been going on in Ukraine for years. The CIA has been meddling in Ukraine affairs going, well, really probably since the fall of the Soviet Union, but especially, with a lot of these neoconservatives and neoliberals, say back, was it 2013, there was a president who was elected who, he wanted to have stronger ties with Russia as opposed to the European Union, and the CIA went in there and stirred up a coup, basically, and then had a president installed who wanted to have stronger ties with the European Union, And I think the president before, the one who wanted to be closer with Russia, he even recognized Russian as kind of the second official language. And then the next president said, no, that's not the second official language, kind of like here in Canada. We've got English and French as our two languages. And that just kind of shows you the tension and almost disrespect that a lot of the ethnically Russian Ukrainians are going through. And I think ultimately the biggest victims are the Ukrainian people. I think Vladimir Zelensky doesn't care about them. I almost just think he's a corrupt puppet. I don't think he's very smart. I think he's kind of, it's in a proxy war now. He's being told what to do by the UK and the CIA, and just I think he wanted there to be a peace deal. He knows there should be, because the country's being decimated. Now they're making deals like BlackRock, and which has ruined the housing market, say in the US. Like, they're just buying up houses like crazy so that normal people can't afford it. Now the BlackRock is going in, making deals with the Ukrainian government to help rebuild Ukraine, but all that is selling the country off to corporations bit by bit. It just seems like Vladimir Zelensky is plundering his own country, robbing his own people, enriching his pockets and the pockets of sociopathic, power-hungry, crazy people. But yeah, so I say, here in Canada, the US, the UK, European Union needs to have stronger ties with Russia and have those wounds healed. I think Vladimir Putin has seen a lot of hypocrisy over the years, from things that the US has done and lies that they've broken. They haven't acted in good faith. And I think a bit of integrity is something he would appreciate and would be good for all of us as far as world peace. And there's no reason why we shouldn't have warm relations with them. It's be good for our economy. It's good for everybody. And rather than pushing Russia into closer ties with China and Iran and things like that, because we're trying to isolate them so much, all that does is weaken us. And I think, Russia has more in common with our values, or at least traditional values, that has made this civilization strong, the rocks of it, which are beginning to fall apart. And so yeah, I do pray for peace and honesty, and for politicians to act in good faith, power back to the people, And these crazy power-hungry oligarchs and military complex, industrial military complex, like, and just mad, crazy world leaders who are not good people and are really just kind of sick. I could go more into it, but to say, yeah, there's lots of lies going on out there, and this whole thing should have been done well over a year ago. All right. I think I'll leave it at that. I've rambled on quite a bit. This wasn't really scripted or anything. Yeah, if you have any comments, I'm interested in hearing your points of view. Leave them in the comment box, and I hope you can like this. And yeah, it's my first episode here, so I hope to, well, get stronger as things move along. It's kind of a low-key episode here. So yeah, maybe if you want to share this and all, see fit. And yeah, hope to talk to you guys again. Yeah, on this show, last page of Tim Page, I'll talk about various things, current events, social commentary, politics, I guess conspiracy theories or evident conspiracies, evidence towards those kinds of things, just whatever's interesting. All right. Okay, you guys have a good night. I hope you guys enjoyed my commentary, and I'd like to hear from all of you. All right. Okay. Good night. God bless.